and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Zara Seidler.
And I'm Sam Koslowski.
Today, we are diving into allegations that some athletes at the 2026 Winter Olympics could be using penis-enlarging injections to gain a competitive advantage in ski jumping. I know that sentence sounds absolutely ridiculous, Sam, but stay with me because this is a real story that the anti-doping agency has said it will investigate further. The claims are that athletes might be manipulating their body measurements to access bigger suits, giving them an advantage in competition.
Zara, this is a wild topic.
I just can't believe those sentences left my mouth on mic.
I mean, the challenge is always
studio.
to come up with new angles so that people getting into their cars or getting onto the bus this morning will
Listen
feel
to us, please.
invigorated to listen to TDA. So let's talk about penis enlargements at the Winter Olympics.
Excellent.
Before you get
This is why we started the company, I actually think.
Totally.
Yeah.
This is the pinnacle.
Yeah.
So, we joke, but there is a real story here. There is a very
seriously.
interesting doping angle to all of this.
Yeah.
Before we get into the allegations and why it has made such a stir in the world of professional sport, can you explain first how ski jumping works as an event and why suit size is so important here?
Okay, so I'll take your first question first about ski jumping because I feel like it's one of those things that we see a lot and don't know the name for. So in ski jumping, athletes ski down a curved ramp and launch themselves into the air.
Yeah.
They are judged on how far they jump and their style while doing it. I've got to say, it's kind of a hard one to describe with words. So if you just pause this podcast now, go search ski jumping on Google Images, you will have a very good idea of what we're talking about. They're like
flying through the air, arms at the sides.
It's a bizarre thing to witness.
It's quite graceful, I think. It's quite a graceful jump. They're flying as fast as they can, trying to stick the landing.
I'm just going to quickly mention, though, that my favorite tweets throughout this entire Winter Olympics has been, how did these people figure out they were good at these specific sports?
Yeah.
Like, how did you figure out you were good at this?
You just
like
want to
fling
jump.
yourself off things and realize that you can go far.
Yeah, I should try it sometime.
You should, but it was the finals yesterday, and that's why we're talking about it, because it's back in the news. We had all eyes on it. If you were watching the Winter Olympics, you would have seen what it is we are trying to describe. And it turns out that the ski suits that you would have seen them wearing are really heavily regulated because of how much they impact performance.
Right.
This reminds me a lot of the Michael Phelps, what are those things called? The swimming suits.
Swimsuits.
Yeah, that how much a piece of apparel can impact you. This is one of those cases.
Okay.
So there are really strict rules around the fit, fabric, and even where the zipper can go in these suits. Suits must conform to the body with some small exceptions for extra fabric. Now, for men, there's an allowance of an additional 3 centimeters of material in the crotch area. And before athletes compete, they undergo a 3D body measurement scan in their underwear, which is then compared to the suit to make sure everything's compliant.
And so why is it that having a bigger suit impacts performance?
Well, it turns out that the bigger the suit, the more surface area, which creates more lift and more drag. Essentially, you can fling yourself further with a bigger suit.
Kind of like parachuting, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So the International Ski and Snowboard Federation's men's race director, that's a mouthful, says that if your suit has a 5% bigger surface area, you fly further.
Right.
And so there was a study published earlier this year in the academic journal Frontiers that looked into this, and it showed that drag increased by around 4% and lift by 5% for every 2 centimeters increase in what they call tolerance, which is how much a garment differs from its pattern.
Wow.
So a suit with an extra 3 centimeters of fabric could see an athlete traveling about 5.8 meters further. And in a sport where fractions of a meter matter quite significantly, that's pretty huge.
I mean, one way to think about it that's been helpful for me is think about somebody who does the kind of free diving world and they've got a suit that is massive and you can kind of see it almost parachuting and ballooning and they go through the air quite gracefully.
Yeah.
It's kind of heading in that direction. And the manufacture and design of ski jump suits is taken really seriously, right?
Yeah, I mean, for that very reason, that it can influence so many different factors. At the 2022 Winter Olympics, 5 female ski jumpers were disqualified for having non-compliant suits. Then last year, 3 Norwegian ski jumping team officials were banned for 18 months for manipulating their athletes' suits ahead of an event. What they had done was sewn in an extra stiffer thread, and that had impacted the performance. And, that was one example of consequences for altering or playing with this suit.
So, Zara, we've talked about the kind of lay of the land here and the ways in which athletes have historically tried to gain an unfair advantage in this particular ski jump event. That brings us to these new allegations. What are athletes accused of doing in 2026?
Hey guys, this is my friend Rosa. Say hi, Rosa.
Hi, Rosa.
She's cooking up the deep dive video that you're watching right now. Rosa, what do you want them to do?
Subscribe.
You heard the woman. Now back to the video.
So, German newspaper Bild was the first to report this. But in February, the paper reported that athletes were using hyaluronic acid injections to enlarge their penises before the sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. It's just an obscene sentence to be saying out loud. Before the 3D body scan.
Yeah.
The theory, of course, based on what we were talking about before, is that if their measurement is bigger during the scan, they'll be allowed more room between their crotch and ski suit when it comes time to compete.
So it sounds like the scrutiny that they've placed on the suits themselves had gotten to such a stage where they had to look at different ways to get an unfair advantage. You mentioned something called hyaluronic acid.
Yes.
Is that something that is actually used medically?
Apparently so. So for any skincare girls out there, you would be well familiar with hyaluronic acid. A lot of us use it as a serum on our face. It's meant to lock in moisture. But medically, injections of hyaluronic acid are commonly used to treat joint pain in areas like the knee, especially for things like osteoarthritis. And so there is a medical usage for this, which I didn't know before I started looking into this story. And if we go into the specific use in this case, a 2022 study with a small group of participants found that injections of the substance actually increased penis length. So Dr. Aaron Staines, who performed these injections at 2 Australian clinics, said size gains are proportional to the extent of treatment. The more extensive the treatment, the more size is gained.
Okay, so this is a real medical procedure. What is WADA, so the World Anti-Doping Authority, what are they saying about it?
Well, at a press conference last week, The Guardian reported that WADA's president said that he promised to look into it. WADA had said that it was not aware of the details, but if anything was to come to the surface, that they would look at anything if it actually was doping related.
Right.
Added that their committee would look into whether this would fall into the category of doping or something else. Because it's not like a clean-cut example of, for example, taking steroids or something like that. There is a bit more nuance to this topic, and I guess that's why we've chosen to talk about it today, even though this has been the weirdest record we've ever done, Sam.
It is a very interesting grey area because I guess you could say that the injections themselves aren't performance-enhancing drugs in the traditional sense.
No, it's hyaluronic acid.
Yeah, so they're being used to manipulate equipment that is then issued with its own totally legitimate kind of specifications and allowances.
I can't really compare it to anything other than those swimming costumes. But again, that wasn't body manipulation. It was the material on that suit. So I don't know.
Well, it's a really interesting one. We're going to have to wait and see what WADA's almost lifetime investigation finds out, whether there's any new rules that come out of this.
Yeah.
And it has, though, put a spotlight, I think, also in the context of the enhanced games and a more kind of open discussion of the ways in which athletes are trying to get those 1 centimeter advantages, or in this case, up to 5.6 meters. The jump, not the artillery. But it definitely has put a spotlight on just how far some athletes would go to gain a competitive advantage.
Well, that wraps up the weirdest podcast topic we've ever recorded.
It's going to be a great week.
It's Monday, and why the hell not? Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of The Daily Aus. If you learned something, I know I did, share it with a friend.
It's this kind of coverage that makes our sports coverage a bit unique, our podcast fun to listen to, and we hope that everyone sticks around and enjoys some good TDA content throughout the week. We'll be back with the evening headlines later today. Until then, have a beautiful start to the week.